Here's a pretty healthy steak dinner using an underrated lean cut of beef. We cook the greens in the meaty pan while the steak rests and garnish with pickled mustard seeds, my new favorite thing. They have the texture of caviar, and you can make them the day of, but they get better as they age in the fridge for a few days. I just bought a bottle of mustard seeds in the spice aisle at my mainstream grocery store, but you can buy whole mustard seeds for much less money here in the States if you go to an Asian grocery. First thing I'm going to do is just cover them in plain water and bring them to a boil. While I wait, I have a shallot and red chili. I will dice both of these to pickle with the seeds. They'll taste nice and provide some color. Seeds have come to a boil. You can see they've already plumped up a fair bit. I will drain them and then even give them a little rinse. Blanching the mustard seeds helps purge some of the bitter compounds inside them, the same things that make mustard greens and other cruciferous vegetables bitter. Some people even repeat the blanching process a few times. I'm not going to bother. A little bitterness doesn't bother me, and there's reason to believe those compounds are good for you, antioxidant. Now I will more than cover them in vinegar. I'm using rice vinegar because my whole dish today is using East Asian flavors, and rice vinegar is usually my all-purpose vinegar anyway. Some people use a mixture of vinegar and water. I like my pickles tart. With that, I will put in a handful of sugar. You could skip that or use less. These actually came out a little too sweet for me. I'll give them a couple of pinches of salt and then bring to a boil. I can resume dicing my vegetables. I'll get that shallot all cut up. I just want the pieces to be roughly the same size as the mustard seeds once cooked. Now, this second boiling in vinegar, I like to do for 10 minutes at most. I find that gets them plump while still preserving their caviar-like crunch. I'm sure the time will depend on the kind of mustard seeds you're using, and you can simply taste them to assess their doneness. If I need to add more vinegar or water to keep them submerged, I will, but in general, I'm trying to minimize the liquid to concentrate the mucilage coming out of the seeds. I want a thick, creamy condiment for my steak. For the last 2 minutes or so of cooking, I'll throw in my vegetables. I don't like for them to boil too long and get all mushy, but a little boiling will help extract some flavor and color from them very quickly. Heat off, and we're done here. I'll give it a taste. It's a hair too sweet, which I can't really fix. It needs salt, that I can fix. You could use this right now, hot. I'm going to throw it into a container, let it cool, and then chill in the fridge. If you're just making refrigerator pickles, you don't have to be fussy with your sanitation or your chemistry. You just make them taste good to you. They'll last in the fridge for at least a couple of weeks and basically get better and better. Time to actually make dinner. I'm going to peel and mince some garlic and ginger for my greens. You could skip this or just do one or the other. The greens will get a ton of flavor simply from the beef, but garlic and ginger make pretty much anything better. Greens. I was going to use a bag of pre-washed, pre-trimmed mustard greens to go with my mustard theme, but I saw this purple curly kale at the store and I just had to have it. I love purple, and curly greens are so good at grabbing sauce and bringing it to your mouth. I'm just trimming the stems out of each of these leaves. You don't have to get the whole thing out, just the really thick part. Sometimes I throw the stems in the compost, but today I want to eat them. Fiber is good for me. Since I'm doing a very quick cook on these greens, I'm going to slice the stems very thinly. This will allow them to cook super fast in the hot pan, and I'll need to set them aside in a separate bowl because they're going to go in before the leaves, which I will hack through somewhat indiscriminately. This may seem like an astounding amount of greens, but for a meal like this, you really need like 2 whole bunches for 3 or 4 people because they cook down enormously. Most of the volume here is just air. You may have noticed a pattern with today's ingredients: dark greens and garlic and ginger and mustard and lean, fresh red meat. These are all foods that studies have associated with modest increases in testosterone. Seeing as I'm turning 40 in a couple weeks, I have been tracking my hormone levels with the sponsor of this video, Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked offers all kinds of tests you can order over the internet and do at home. Everything from sexual health to cholesterol and thyroid and diabetes stuff. It is my own damn business why I want to track my testosterone, and I don't feel the need to always get a permission slip from a doctor or the dumpster fire that is the American health insurance system. The pricing with Let's Get Checked is reasonable and transparent. This whole operation is run by real physicians who review the results. The labs you mail your samples to are accredited, and if you've got a serious problem, a nurse will get in touch, but you can always just see your results online. My T appears to have been going down. That may be from aging or from regrettable lifestyle choices or just some random short-term variation. I need to do several tests over time to get a clear picture of what's happening. And if I really do seem to have a problem, I'll talk to my doctor about it. Right now, I'm just trying better diet and exercise. If you want to test your hormone levels without having to leave home, visit trylgc.com/Adam Ragusia. Use my code ADAM30. You'll get 30% off your test with my link and code in the description. Thank you. Let's get checked. So the cut of steak I'm using today is known in American butchery as sirloin. It's kind of the transition between the expensive tender cuts of the animal's back and the tough, cheap cuts of its hindquarters. British and Australasian butchers generally refer to cuts from this area as rump steak. The biggest muscle in it is the gluteus medius. There's actually a little bit of tenderloin there, and then there are a few other muscles that start to run down into the hip. You'll find sirloins butchered all kinds of ways. What I like to do is cut out the individual muscles, cut along that intermuscular or seam fat, and then trim it off, get rid of it, along with any connective tissue in there. If you're not sure where the seams are between the muscles, just pull. The seams will tear naturally, up to a point. If I separate all the muscles out, I can remove all of the gristle and blubbery bits of fat that a lot of people would eat around anyway on their plate. And this means I'll be able to cook each muscle a little differently. Some will need more time than others. Post-trimming, that's maybe around 1.25 pounds of meat, just over half a kilo, enough for 3 or 4 people, I'd say. What we Americans call sirloin here is relatively inexpensive. It is a true steak, meaning it's cut against the grain of the muscle fibers, and in my opinion, sirloin has the best flavor of any true steak that is A, very lean, and B, still pretty tender. Big beef flavor with fewer calories. I'll get my widest pan heating over high flame. If you have a very powerful electric stove, you'd probably want medium or medium high. I'll get my ventilation pumping. There's going to be some smoke. Enough salt and pepper for both sides of the steaks. I'll rub it all around in just a second. Today, I'm also doing a tiny little bit of Chinese 5-spice. It's very strong, so just a little bit. Drizzle with a little oil, and then I'll rub everything everywhere. I actually wish I had put on a little more oil than I did. This meat is so lean, it needs a little extra fat on the surface to get a nice golden crust. I'll put the biggest pieces in first because they'll need more time. I'm pressing to make sure I get good contact with the pan. And whenever possible, I very much favor the constant flipping method of cooking steak. Flip every 30 seconds or so. I'll poke to get a baseline reading of what these particular steaks feel like when they are raw on the inside. I think near constant flipping does cook the meat a little more evenly, but more importantly, it gives you situational awareness. If the pan is too hot, you're going to see the meat just starting to burn before it's too late to turn the heat down, which I did do here. That little bit with a piece of filet on it is already done, so out it comes. Another reason I like using a wide, relatively thin cut for this particular recipe is the pan is mostly covered in meat, and that will minimize the uncovered area on which the fond is likely to burn at steak searing temperatures. I want to cook my greens in here in a minute, and if there's a ton of burned fond, that's going to make my veggies taste bad. Plus, burned meat is potentially carcinogenic. Alrighty, when the center of the steak feels like it's just firming up relative to that baseline poke I did at the beginning, that means I'm getting into medium rare territory, which is what I want. It's also a good sign if I see pink juice starting to surface. As I get down to the last big pieces, I will turn my heat way down or else everything is going to burn. A decent crust on those, though it would have been nicer if I'd used more oil. Okay, my kale stems go in first. They need a couple-minute head start to get soft. And again, because that meat was so lean, I think I need some more oil in there for quicker cooking. I use extra virgin olive oil for nearly everything, by the way. My heat is on about medium, stir, 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 and when I can see those pieces starting to soften, I'll stir in my garlic and ginger, and immediately after, I'll start putting in my leaves. If you kind of push on them for a second, you can get them cooking a little faster. No worries if you can't fit them all in yet. Depending on how wet the leaves were, you might need to splash in some water to help deglaze the pan and keep the aromatics from burning. Also just to serve as a thermal interface to get the leaves cooking down. These leaves had just enough water on and in them already. Now that they've shrunk a bit, I can fit in the rest, and I'm going to hit these with a little Thai fish sauce, but you could use soy sauce or Worcestershire or again, even just water. It's been 4 minutes since the leaves went in, and they look just about done to me. I'll taste for seasoning. They don't need any more salt because the fish sauce was salty. I am going to summon forth the upside-down bear. Even a little honey really knocks back the bitterness of dark greens and makes them glossy. We are done. Off the heat. Now the meat is perfectly rested and ready to carve. I'm doing thin strips at an angle, mainly just to make it pretty and easy to eat. This is not like flank steak where you have to slice it thin to make it chewable. You can serve these steaks whole. I just love cooking meat and then cooking my veg in the same pan while the meat rests, because thick cuts of meat need to rest, but vegetables do not. They are best hot and fresh right out of the pan, so it's synergistic, and the greens are so hot they'll actually reheat the slices of beef. Here's my mustard seed caviar straight out of the fridge. I like the temperature contrast, but you could heat it up or simply eat it right after you boiled it. I obviously have way more mustard seeds than I'll need for this meal, but that's fine. I will eat them on nearly everything I cook for the next week or two. They're awesome on eggs. Honestly, those are better than caviar, in my opinion, and unlike caviar, they are inexpensive, good for you, and totally sustainable. I've got a few cilantro leaves on there, by the way, but they're hardly necessary. I do not cook a lot of steak at home anymore for many reasons, but I will definitely be doing this one again, an excellent post-workout meal.